A year after the violent attack on the Capitol by hundreds of Americans determined to stop the certification of the 2020 election, a new CBS News poll finds that day still has a lingering effect on the national psyche. 68% think it's a sign of more violence to come, and 2/3 think democracy itself is threatened. Joining us now is CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, good morning to you. This is an incredible number. 68% of Americans believe the country is at risk of violence.
Good morning, Margaret. It is. Let's try to understand what's driving that a little bit. First, look back on that day at the Capitol. And I should start by saying there's overwhelming disapproval of what happened, but there are 17% now that do approve of what happened. Over the course of the year, we've seen some movement among Republicans within those who disapprove, a little bit of softening of that from the strongly disapprove, a little more into this somewhat disapprove category. And then let's look forward, because what's so important isn't just what people anticipate. It's that democracy depends on not just folks following the norms, but thinking that other people will. Well, in future presidential elections, do you expect there to be more violence by the losing side? And you get 62% who say, yeah, that could happen.
Does that amount to an endorsement of political violence? And who are these Americans?
It does not. And what we want to emphasize here is that it's not that people say that they themselves would undertake it, but whether they might be okay with it if other people did. Let's start by looking back at what people think happened that day. Well, there's a lot of folks on the Republican side, 4 in 10, who think that rather than Trump supporters who entered the Capitol, that it was left-leaning groups pretending to be Trump supporters. So then you look at people who believe in conspiracy theories, in QAnon. They are much more likely than Americans overall to approve. So it all starts perhaps with what they believe to be the case. Now, we tackled this head on. We asked, okay, what do you want former President Trump to be doing now? And there's 12% of the country that say he should be fighting right now to get back into the office before the next election. Now, you take a subset of them who say that if necessary, force could be used to do that. Now, that's 4% of the country. We don't often talk about numbers that small. But what we've seen here is that it doesn't take large numbers of people to feel that way, and then that in turn leads to that lessening confidence or that anticipation that more violence might arise because they know that those folks are out there, Margaret.
An important point. But we are seeing radicalized politics outside the United States, too. From what you see here at home, is all of this about the former president, or is something else driving it?
Yeah, we asked about a range of issues, not just elections, and asked, well, are these important enough that violence could be justified, again, if undertaken perhaps by others? And you get a range from civil rights to gun policies to labor issues, among others, where you get 20-odd%, even 30-odd% who say that it might be justified. And then you look at, well, is it justifiable for candidates or elected officials to do things like call for violence? And that's 14%. Again, not an overwhelming number, but it is some. Now, one of the things you want to look at, Margaret, is why they think that might be justified. It's not so much that people think that violence can itself be acceptable, but they fear that their opponents might do that or worse. So it's a sign of that underlying mistrust. However, it's a new year. I want to show you something besides these very sobering things. You look at whether people think, in the abstraction, that the U.S. should divide into red and blue states. And there are not many people who feel that way. The overwhelming number of people would like the country to stay together.
A note of optimism. Anthony, thank you.